Hey guys, the Common Man here. So I've had this knife now for quite some time. It is the Microtech MSI, and I've hinted at it a couple of times that I was going to give a full review, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. So this knife has actually gotten a ton of pocket time. If I'm looking for something robust, something that's going to get the job done, and still makes for a really good everyday carry knife, this is one that I'm definitely going to consider grabbing for, and I've just really enjoyed it. So what we're working with here is M390 MK on the blade, and that is Microtech's kind of their own special version of M390, which is an excellent high-end blade steel. And you can see we've got this beautiful kind of two-tone finish on this. I think they call this the apocalyptic or apocalypse finish, where it's got this kind of stone washed with the satin on the flat there. You can see it's like a kind of like a sand, or I'm sorry, a belt satin finish, and it looks really good. And honestly, all of the edges on this blade are so beautifully knocked down. It's done really well. There's nothing sharp where it shouldn't be sharp, and the edge where it should be sharp is incredibly sharp. They did a really nice job on this knife. So you can see the blade shape is very unique. This is not, it's not going to have the pokiest tip on it, but it is a very robust tip. And that's kind of a theme with this knife. You can see that although it's not an overly thick blade stock, the thickness does carry out quite far. And the thing is, because of this almost like a sheep's foot kind of style, it's got a lot of material right up towards the front there. So it gives it a good solid weight. This is a very heavy blade. And just to get an idea of how heavy it is, when you actually disengage the lock and let it fall, you hear it snap shut. And there's a lot of force there. It closes like, it really feels like a guillotine. I mean, it's got so much force when it closes, and it actually bounces, you can feel. So when you get this in hand and you close it and close that blade, if it's got that nice action like this one does, you're going to realize how much that blade weighs. And that actually does help with the action as well. It allows it to have that nice kind of free pivot where you can kind of swing it open and swing it shut. Just very cool. It definitely helps out with that action. Although I will say that it does make the balance a little bit awkward because there is a lot of weight up front, especially with this polymer handle, which is very lightweight. And you know, this is basically like a plastic material. So the center of the mass is probably, well, you can feel, yeah, right, maybe just barely behind that pivot. Whereas sometimes when the center of the mass is right about here, it feels a little bit more natural, in my opinion. So having all that weight up forward does make it feel a little bit odd. But, you know, it's not something that should bother you too much, especially once you get used to it. But, you know, because of that robustness, this does feel like a blade that you're really not going to hurt, especially that M390. That's a great blade material. So it's going to hold an edge nice and long. Overall, the blade is just, it's fantastic. I really like it. Ergonomics are great with this knife. Lots of room on the handle. You can choke up very tight. You can actually get your thumb right up here, and lots of jimping up there for grip. So you can choke right up on the blade, which gives you incredible control. And this is where the weight of the blade actually becomes kind of nice, because once you get choked all the way up, you actually, it just, because of the weight of that blade, it just gives you a feeling of, I don't know, like you can just really get some heavy work done with this knife. And, you know, hard use kind of tasks feel like it's just not going to be an issue with this because of just how stout this blade feels. And you know, ergonomics are just beautiful, because if you hold it back, it's just as comfortable. You can still throw your thumb up there and still feel like you've got lots of control on that blade. And there's so much room on this handle where your grip options really, I mean, you've got so many options for grips. And honestly, when you are choked fully up, you've got enough room there for 2 more fingers, which just shows you the overall size of this knife. And so now going back into the handle, so the polymer does have this unique design, which I actually do kind of like. It's got this interesting pattern here, and then kind of a flatter surface up here. And then what really makes this knife pop, it's the same with the Microtech Stitch, which I've just covered recently. It just has all of this hardware, and it just makes it look so cool. It makes it look, I don't know, it just makes it look like a tool. It reminds me honestly of kind of like a power tool, almost like a Milwaukee or something, the way that they're kind of almost over designed, but in kind of a tasteful way. That's kind of what I think of with this knife. It just looks really cool. And then it's got the beautiful hardware on the back, nice titanium back spacer, and then this lock. This lock, I'm telling you what, I love it. I really hope Microtech keeps making new designs with this lock. I know they have these two, the Stitch, the MSI. They have the Amphibian, which I really don't care for. I don't like recurve blades, but I do hope that they keep making interesting designs with this lock. And honestly, what I'd love to see is this knife with the same handle, with maybe a little bit different blade shape. I would like to see something similar to this, maybe with a little bit less material up towards the front, something with a blade a little bit more, a little bit similar to this, where it's got a nice fine tip. Because that's really what makes me kind of want to carry this over the MSI in a lot of cases, is that very fine tip, which really allows for some nice intricate work. That's probably my biggest complaint with this knife, is just that big chunky tip. And another thing is too, it's not the sliciest thing in the world. This lock, I'm telling you what, like I was saying, is just, it's really hard to beat. You can actually use it with one finger. It works so smoothly. Although it does work best, obviously, when you do the pinch. Another thing which I think would be very cool is if they went ahead and actually raised this surface up here so you could disengage it with your pointer finger. I think that they could easily do that, just give you a little bit of a bump there to be able to pull back on your pointer finger. And I know that you'd be able to disengage it pretty easily. At least I think so. Anyway, it would be something I'd be interested in seeing if they could make that happen. And then it would make it a lot closer to like the Demko Shark Lock or something like that, which would be very cool and give you some different disengagement options. But overall, guys, I mean, this thing is just incredible. I really love it. And like I was saying, the plastic doesn't feel too bad. It feels surprisingly sturdy, it just being big chunks of basically plastic. It does have that kind of plasticky feel, but again, I mean, there's really virtually no flex. You can see I can just barely flex it, but I'm putting a lot of force into that. So that is very impressive. And then, pocket clip works good. I don't love this little dip that they put in there. It does make it a little bit difficult sometimes getting in and out of the pocket. It does want to snag. But it's all right. One thing I do want to mention, not on this knife, but actually on my Stitch, I did actually have the pocket clip snag onto something and pull out, and it actually bent the clip to where there was a little bit of a gap between the clip and the scale. I ended up having to take the clip off and squeeze it right at this point right here just to tighten it back up again. And I noticed that, and I've never taken either of these apart, but I noticed that they actually use a little metal insert. You can kind of barely make it out there, but there's a metal insert, and that is actually threaded. That's got two threaded holes to accept these screws. So if you're going to take off this pocket clip, keep in mind that that little insert is not held in place by anything other than these two screws. So as you're undoing these screws, that insert is going to fall out. So I ended up having actually a heck of a hard time trying to keep that insert in place while putting the pocket clip back on. So you kind of have to wedge something in there to hold that insert up in there while you are screwing in the screws. And as you push the screws in, the insert's wanting to push down. It was a pain. So keep that in mind if you're going to mess with the pocket clip. You do have to kind of have a game plan on how you want to do that. And taking off the entire side scale to be able to hold that insert in is not really ideal. So I don't know. I'd be interested in seeing if they could find a solution to that, because that was a bit of a pain. But anyway, I do actually plan on uploading a full disassembly video on the MSI and the Microtech Stitch here soon. So I would really be interested in seeing how the internals work and actually taking them apart and putting them back together. That would be kind of my final determining factor on how much I really, really enjoy this knife, because that to me is a big deal. If it's a total pain to take apart, that can be a big downside. But I don't know. I don't really see that being the case, because this does seem like a fairly straightforward, kind of simple design, so I'm excited to see how that goes. Anyway, guys, I mean, that's pretty much my full review of this. Like I've said, I have carried this a ton, and I absolutely love it. And I do plan on uploading a full side-by-side comparison of these two knives here, the Microtech Stitch and the Microtech MSI. But honestly, anything Microtech Ram-Lok, I would say do it. I would just go for it. I would give it a shot. And the thing is, because these aren't always available right away, although availability seems to be getting a little bit better, I think you could pretty much get your money back out of it if you don't like it. So maybe consider secondhand market, but they do seem to hold their value decently well. So I would definitely recommend picking up one of these knives, and especially the MSI, and I think you'd be very happy. So anyway, that's that. Thank you so much for the support, and if you want to see more of my knife EDC videos and some of my garage videos, which I'm going to be uploading now, go ahead and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it.